Welcome back, subscribers, and welcome new viewers. I will be reading from my Saturn book, Natal Saturn in aspect to natal Venus. And it is very essential. And so in aspect means the hard aspects are going to be conjunct, opposition, and square. And then the mild or the compatible or easy aspects are sextile and trine. Okay. And I want to thank Pauline. Thank you, Pauline, for your question, which has enabled me to make this video so that everyone who has this same aspect can benefit from this video as well. So thank you. And I want to thank each and every one of you who have subscribed and who like and share my videos, because that helps my whole channel to circulate to more and more individuals just like you who need this information. So thank you. Okay. Saturn contacts to Venus, when they occur in the charts of those who are not predisposed toward introspection or self-understanding, are some of the most painful contacts to deal with. This is particularly true for the charts of women. In both men's and women's charts, one of the traditional interpretations, which seems to be accurate enough, is that the failure or sorrow in marriage and in love, with a subsequent residue of disillusionment, bitterness, fear, and a great sensitivity to rejection, which colors all successive romantic encounters with a certain aloofness and mistrust. It is probable that the initial failure, and there is generally one very painful one, is not the only key to the patterns of behavior which are so typical of Venus-Saturn, but that an additional and more important key may be found in childhood, in the individual's relationship to his parents, and particularly to the parent of the opposite sex. This is not a new concept, but has been suggested before in reference to Venus-Saturn configurations. Saturn's associations with the parents bring this element into all Saturnian contacts with the personal planets. And I just want to interject very quickly here that, again, there is no fault or blame on either parent, because, again, this is your natal wheel and this is what you were born with. This specific aspect, this energy, this frequency that was coming to you at birth, that will be giving you these feelings or this energy that you are putting off, that will what's the best way to say it? Give you these types of experiences that I'm going to be reading. Okay, so no, it's not. It doesn't have to do. It has to do with your parents, as far as they are a part in your play. And also, this could be ancestral. Maybe they also have aspecting Venus and Saturn as well. Okay. Venus seems to have importance in relation to one's capacity to be happy in the conventional sense, to be at peace or in harmony with oneself and with the environment. More than any other aspect, Venus-Saturn appears to strike at a person's happiness, and the usual feeling with the aspect even if its more drastic forms are not expressed, is a nagging discontent and the feeling that one will never be able to be happy or take pleasure in life. So you're going to have that feeling because of the aspect, this Saturn and Venus aspect. And depending on the severity of the aspect, it could differ in how often or deep that feeling is for each and every one of you. It's going to be different. This contact, even the harmonious aspects of trine or sextile, strike also at a woman's basic attitude toward her own femininity and her worth as a woman, and affects a man's basic attitude toward women. Although it may be argued by the more esoterically inclined that personal relationships are of minor importance on the spiritual path, nevertheless, loneliness and rejection in the case of people with Venus-Saturn contacts can ruin the entire life, and the importance of relationships as they are symbolized by the descendant of the chart is not to be underestimated. Okay, and everyone's descendant, for those of you who do not know what that is. Okay, so we have our ascendant, which is right there at the beginning, or what's called the cusp of our first house. So for example, my ascendant is Aries. And all of you who want to see my full natal wheel, I give all of my birth information for all of you who would like to see that in the description box below, along with all of my information, my email, everything, on the drop down box below this video and every video, or most of my videos, I should say, not in the beginning, but most of my videos for the past year. Okay, and what was I saying? Okay, so my ascendant is Aries. So straight across from your ascendant is going to be your descendant. So whatever is at the cusp or the beginning of your 7th house, and mine is Libra. So Aries and Libra, they always oppose each other. Now, for those of you, there are going to be some of you who have an oh boy, I just lost the word. Just interception. An interception to your ascendant, or to that side of your chart, or maybe not. No, I guess that's not correct. Forget it. You could have an interception, but it's not going to be, it should not be affecting because your ascendant, you're going to have an opposite. Whatever the opposite of that zodiac sign is going to be your descendant. Okay, so let's continue. This is one of the cardinal points of the birth chart and of the individual's life. While the setting for Sun-Saturn contacts is a broader and more abstract stage where the issues of one's significance to oneself and one's role in life are at stake, the setting for Venus-Saturn contacts is the sphere of intimate relationships, and it is often in the private recesses of the bedroom that the final effects of these aspects take their toll. In fine balance to the great unhappiness and isolation which often accompany Venus-Saturn aspects, there is also as great a potential for a deep and meaningful and permanent relationship based on complete understanding and on free choice rather than mutual need. The mysteries of union are within the grasp of the person with this contact, For although he stands to lose much, and usually must spend a good portion of his life without a companion or without true companionship, he also holds the key to a relationship which is lasting and real. There you go. There you go. Libra is the sign of Saturn's exaltation. And Venus-Saturn contacts are similar and perhaps even more clear in their inference that relationships are the path to self-knowledge and self-development. So through your experiences, through your intimate experiences, whether you're male or female, and working through that and actually knowing this consciously now, you now can, and you have a great potential to, once you've worked through this, and I'm getting to South Node is a key element too, so you might want to check and see how your nodes of the moon are in aspect to Venus and Saturn as well, or Venus or Saturn. But you viewers have the greatest ability to have that lasting, unconditionally loving relationship once you've worked through this. And again, I'm going to say along with or in conjunction at the same time, or incorporating your nodes of the moon. That is also absolutely imperative. Okay. The connection of Venus-Saturn contacts to sexual inhibitions, particularly the varying degrees of sexual defensiveness, which we term frigidity, is rarely mentioned, since sorrow in love is somehow expected to imply this often sorrowful area of experience as well. But Venus-Saturn contacts cannot be consciously utilized in a constructive way unless an effort is made at honesty with oneself. As with all Saturnian aspects, we must consider the workings of the unconscious with its tendency to hold compensatory or opposite attitudes and feelings in relation to the conscious personality and efforts of the individual. And I'm also being called to say, some of you or all of you might want to take a look at your natal wheel and make sure that, and see if you have any other planets besides your nodes of the moon that are in aspect to either Saturn and or Venus as well, because that will also play a role. And it's going to be different for each and every one of you. So if you have any questions you'd ever like me to take a look at your natal wheel to assist in explaining anything, or whatever you would like, send me an email. Leave me a comment, but I will need your email address and your birth information. So all of the information that I would need, if you don't have a natal wheel yet and you'd like me to do that, then all of that information again is in the drop down box below this video and all of my videos. Okay. Okay, so regardless of how badly the person with Venus-Saturn wants to express sexually and emotionally, there is usually an equally intense unconscious fear which makes defense necessary at all costs. Venus-Saturn combinations imply a certain amount of emotional pain and rejection in the early home life. This may be of an obvious kind, such as the home where nobody touches each other or expresses any overt display of affection or warmth. It may also be of a more subtle kind, where much material display is offered, many gifts given, and great effort made to provide the physical comforts, but where there is no real recognition of or love of the child in a straightforward way. It is common with these aspects to find parents who love their child because he is their child, but do not actually like the child when it comes to a real appreciation of his individuality. This kind of love is very frequent in connection with Venus-Saturn contacts. It's particularly common among parents who have children because it is the accepted thing to do, but who do not themselves unconsciously want the responsibility. There are many similar and equally complex patterns which may be found with Venus-Saturn, but they generally involve a lack of real love in the home and often imply unconscious rivalry or hostility from one or both parents. The child is usually better off away from his parents as soon as he is old enough to stand alone, regardless of how much guilt and havoc this may create in the home. The longer he remains in the family fold, the greater his sense of inadequacy will be later in life. The capacity for expression and receipt of affection, symbolized by Venus, is often cramped and twisted because there is so little genuine affection in childhood, and the individual often finds that he cannot untwist himself later in male-female relationships because he has grown so accustomed to his defenses. There is usually a deep and almost compulsive need to be loved, which accompanies Venus-Saturn contacts, along with the characteristic Saturnian coolness and defensiveness. It may be said of people with this contact that there's often a feeling of being unloved, and in consequence, they find it difficult to express love themselves, except in that slightly demanding, sometimes possessive, discontented, yet painfully sensitive and vulnerable manner, which is more often seen in children of about 3 or 4 years of age. In some fashion, the affectional nature has been frozen and remains in a childlike and awkward state, while the rest of the temperament, including the defense mechanism, grows up around it. There is often much sophistication in people with Venus-Saturn contacts because their search for happiness may take them into some strange byways in pursuit of a love which does not bring pain. But the emotional nature in this area remains essentially that of a child. Now, anyone who's pays attention to sign and synchronicities, I never look at the page number, but I just looked at the page number of what I just read, and it's 111. So I'm just putting that out there. And I feel the need to say also that this could be an ancestral thing. So for one, again, this is your aspect in your natal wheel, the Saturn and Venus. So if your parents have anything to do with this, which it sounds like they're going to, it's because of your chart, because this is your play, and they are the actresses and actors in your play, and or they could also, if you are able to look at their natal wheels, they also could have this same aspect as well. So it could be an ancestral thing as well. from both parents or one parent. Okay. We have all encountered those children who, because of their fear of being unwanted, can only express their need for affection through destructive actions, or an attempt to inflict pain, or sulking and weeping. If we transfer this rather extreme picture to the adult body and mind of the Venus-Saturn individual, and include the skill at portraying surface coolness, which he has usually developed, we will hold the key to his peculiar and often misunderstood emotional nature. Of course, not all people with Venus-Saturn contacts have in this, excuse me. Of course, not all people with Venus-Saturn contacts behave in this fashion. Absolutely not. And don't feel bad if those of you who are listening have. Don't feel bad. Again, you're now finding out consciously what this aspect, what this astrological energy at your birth, why these behaviors, why those experiences that any of you do recognize, where it now comes from. And again, you were given this at birth. So it's not your fault. There is no blame on you blaming yourself or your mother or your father. Again, because they couldn't take care of this, they didn't know about it. It transfers down through generations. Some of these astrological, whether it's the nodes of the moon and or these different planets and aspects, they do transfer down. Okay. But now you are becoming aware of it, so you can do something about it. And when you do something about it consciously, this is what you're doing, is you're bringing this out in your conscious awareness so you can do something different, live a much better, freer life. And then that also at the same time changes your ancestry right there. It stops this from continuing. Okay. So you can be very proud of yourselves. It's very outstandingly awesome. Good for you. Good for you. And it's all right. If you didn't know and you already had children, that's okay. Don't feel bad because you didn't know this before. Now you do, and now, from now and here on, I don't care your age, you have the ability and now the conscious awareness to take control and do something about it and do something different so you can free yourself. Okay. And maybe you want to express this and will have a chance to tell a child of yours that has the same aspect. Or the same aspect. Okay. Okay, so where was I at? Let's see here. Okay, here we do. But there is a touch of this quality present, although it may be beautifully masked or outweighed by more self-expressive factors. It is particularly rare to find men who express the real vulnerability of the contact, since it is far less acceptable in our society for a man to admit that he is afraid of being unloved. So he will very likely affect the traditional Venus-Saturn exterior, coldness, which can extend to heartlessness, callousness to the emotional hurts of others, a suspicious and jealous nature which expects constantly and in spite of reassurance to be eventually betrayed, and yet a very deep and unshakable loyalty to someone who may be abusive, dependent, or the least deserving of objects. If we remember that these are people whose emotional growth in the realm of relationships has been stunted in childhood, it should be possible to see past the reputation this aspect holds for being incapable of love, and understand that what we are pleased to call love is often the expression of need and of sentiment, and that this expression is to be convincing. Oh, to be convincing must be observed and experienced in childhood. The Venus-Saturn individual is often awkward when confronted with the world of sentiment. It makes him acutely uncomfortable because he's not used to it. For him, love is often linked with sacrifice, and he will either avoid it entirely or make of himself or his partner the sacrifice which he believes is required. So you will experience, some of you are going to have experienced these things in childhood, and now be this not being able to connect your emotional self, your emotions with your adult self in your adult life, because again, it has everything to do with this aspect. Not what happened in childhood. What happened in childhood is because of this aspect you were born with. In a woman's horoscope, Venus, besides being the symbol of the affectional nature, is also symbolic of femininity itself, not the maternal aspect of femininity, which is the province of the moon, but the ideal companion who expresses beauty, harmony, grace, and charm. Venus is the archetype of the hetera or courtesan rather than the mother. And these two faces, Venus and the moon, together symbolize the female principle on a personal level. Venus-Saturn contacts usually affect a woman's confidence in herself as a woman, not only by society's definition of womanhood, but by her own inner definition as well. It is usual to find Venus-Saturn women in the competitive world of business, and this type of woman often excels in her profession. She may be driven to achievement, not only because she has a genuine love of work, responsibility, and creative self-expression, but also because she may feel that she cannot properly function in any feminine capacity. Only the masculine world is left to her then. Venus-Saturn contacts in their unconscious form do not appear to be analogous, I hope I said that right, to the truly liberated woman who has found her own center. They appear to be more concurrent with the woman who is frightened of being a woman because she thinks she will fail at it. Okay, I need to see the time. Okay, we're still good. These two creatures are often apparently similar, but the typical Venus-Saturn woman carries deep feelings of inferiority and unattractiveness, regardless of how physically appealing she may be. It is common also to find Venus-Saturn women in the performing arts, as models, and even as the modern equivalent of the hetera, with perhaps less glamour. For these women, it is terribly important to be loved, admired, and thought beautiful. This is hardly liberation. It is closer to an enslavement to fear. It is no wonder that Venus-Saturn aspects have the reputation of making a woman unpopular with her own sex, as she despises and fears this sex within herself, she attracts resentment and fear from other women. The prostitute symbolizes one extreme of Venus-Saturn, and this is perhaps the most difficult expression for a woman because of the loneliness of this way of life. The woman at the opposite end of the spectrum, the celibate spinster, is not so opposite as she first seems to be, for both these women have found a way to avoid the pain of a deep emotional involvement without having to admit to themselves that this is the basis of the behavior pattern. To love in the sense that Saturn requires, it costs something. For this kind of love can entertain no illusions and cannot be based on the satisfaction of a personal need. Many people with Venus-Saturn aspects are afraid to pay the price, although the opportunity is given them to develop this deeper side of the affectional nature and to learn about the more meaningful aspects of relationships. These two extremes also bear some resemblance to the more typical Venus-Saturn woman who plays the role of the modern housewife, for she has sold her soul and her dreams in exchange for the security and safety of a house, an automobile, and the guarantee of maintenance payments if the marriage fails. She will often choose a partner not because she loves him or because the relationship seems a valid one, but because he is safe and cannot hurt her or reach her more vulnerable feelings. No punishment is meted, meted, out by the angry gods of these women who have escaped from paying Saturn's dues. The endless frustration and isolation of a meaningless life is payment enough. We may find Saturn overcompensating on occasion, and this kind of pattern is equally frustrating because it is just as isolating. Now, I have to say this is long, so I'm going to do my best to complete it. But if I don't, and you want me to either read the rest in another video or you want the written copy, just let me know. Okay. Okay, so it is common to find a person with Venus-Saturn following a pattern of relationships where the partner is a burden, emotionally or mentally or physically inferior in one way or another. Venus-Saturn women are often burdened with husbands or lovers whom they despise or who are in some fashion a source of unhappiness, yet they will not let go and will offer any one of 100 excuses for maintaining the relationship with such men. Martyrdom of a self-imposed kind is a common Venus-Saturn manifestation, and the familiar cry, "I've given so much to him, and all he does is abuse me," must have first been given by a woman with Venus in aspect to Saturn. So women, those of you viewers who have done this and see this as something, don't you feel bad. Please don't feel bad. Not at yourself. And now you don't have to blame yourself. You don't have to blame him or anyone else, because here is where this comes from. Because you didn't know any better. Now you do. Now you're consciously aware. Now you can do something about it. Okay. It is in situations such as these that the deceptiveness of these contacts is evident, for it is as difficult to see one's motives clearly with a psychological pattern of this kind as it is to see the bottom of a murky lake. It takes courage to tackle this aspect and make something constructive of it. Absolutely, absolutely. But it can be so unpleasant in its manifestations that it often has the knack of bringing out a person's latent source of courage. The saying, "No pain, no gain," came to my mind. Most important is the acceptance of responsibility for, as with all Saturnian contacts, the sorrow in love is not the cruel hand of blind fate at work, but the natural response to an unconscious pattern. There you go, yes, that you were given at birth because of Venus and Saturn, specifically at your time of birth, those energies coming to you while you were being birthed, while you were being born into this world. That's where this comes from. Okay. It may seem that in light of the psychological convolutions which generally accompany Venus-Saturn contacts, there is a little positive to be said for them. But the rule seems generally to be, at least with Saturn, that his benefits are in direct proportion to the amount of pain he can endure. Not endure, maybe endure too. Endure, yes, engender. The individual with a Venus-Saturn aspect, particularly with the conjunction, square, or opposition, has his work particularly cut out for him. This can unquestionably be a very distressing aspect, particularly to a person who is sensitive or romantic by nature. If he is willing to take an honest look at the motives within himself, which have helped to create the patterns of disappointment which he expresses, he can learn a tremendous amount, not only about himself, but about the nature of love and the nature of relationships. This knowledge, which eventually develops into wisdom, can help him to establish a fully conscious and free relationship with a minimum of unconscious projection and a maximum of honesty. Only the person who has truly loved in freedom from the heart and not from the solar plexus can appreciate the nature of the gift offered by Saturn aspecting Venus. It is a question of first learning to love oneself. The man with the Venus-Saturn contact may not have quite as difficult a time as his female counterpart, but with men, these aspects often are symbolic of a general mistrust of women. There is often the fulfillment of the usual pattern of the safe partner, and a great deal is often made of something which is referred to as duty, but which is closer to martyrdom. Sometimes there is a great resentment or hostility toward women, with fear behind the resentment, and this kind of man will generally dislike a woman who expresses any degree of intelligence or individuality, because he maintains his security by keeping his women under control. This is one of the aspects which can incline toward the proverbial male chauvinist pig. So despised by the women's liberation movement, ironically, however, this movement, in its more extreme forms, is populated by women with the same Venus-Saturn contacts. With infinite gentleness and patience, the universe informs us yet again that like attracts like. Venus-Saturn contacts are highly important for several reasons, and it is worth the exploration of their nuances and subtleties to get a clearer idea of the amount of power they wield. There is an unmistakable stamp which often accompanies people who have the aspect on the natal chart. And although Venus is a personal planet without much power in the orthodox sense, the entire personality is often shaped by the presence of a strong Venus-Saturn contact. Let's see what time there is. Okay, so I'm just going to keep on reading. We're getting close. We'll see. It might, my video might automatically stop on me. I'm just going to keep reading through. Okay. There is an inference in all of this which suggests that Venus is perhaps more important a planet than we give her credit for being, and that she has deeper meaning than ornamentation and affection. Esoteric doctrine tells us that Venus is the twin sister or alter ego of the Earth, and that in the coming centuries she will have greater power both astrologically and symbolically. Wow. There is obviously no way to demonstrate at this point whether this piece of esotericism is of value. But in spite of our more modern declarations to the contrary, meaningful relationships, whether we call them marriage or not, are of major importance in the life and growth of the individual psyche, both because of the actual experience and because of the inner reality which it symbolizes. We have only to look briefly at mythology and folklore, and also at the alchemical, I don't know what that word is, Conjunctio, or marriage, of sun and moon, to glimpse the enormous psychic importance of the marriage rite as a symbol of union and integration. Even those who for religious reasons eschew relationships must find a suitable psychological substitute. So the nun becomes the bride of Christ, and the priest offers service to Mother Church. It is in the area of relationships that human beings are the most vulnerable. And consequently, it is here that they can make the greatest steps in growth and self-understanding. Saturn, as we know, is in exaltation in Libra, and some of this opportunity is reflected when he is in the 7th house, or aspects Venus. The path of building a relationship based on love and on free choice is as valid and as difficult a path as the most obtruse of esoteric disciplines. I did it. That's it. I have completed it. Okay. Wow. All right. So, if any of you want a written copy, just let me know. And until next time, bye.